The train rattled across the American heartland, its cargo unlike any other crossing these plains in the summer of 1943. Inside the carriages sat hundreds of German prisoners of war, their faces pressed against the windows, watching a landscape that shattered everything they'd been told about their enemy. These men had crossed the Atlantic expecting a nation on its knees. Nazi propaganda had painted America as a decadent, crumbling society, torn apart by racial strife and economic weakness. They had been assured that the United States lacked the industrial capacity, the discipline, and the will to fight a modern war. What they discovered instead would haunt them for the rest of their lives, not with terror, but with the devastating realization that they had been lied to, and that the war was already lost. For most German POWs, the awakening began the moment they set foot on American soil. After surviving the harrowing conditions of North African or European battlefields, then enduring the anxiety of Atlantic crossings, they arrived expecting something grim. Perhaps a harsh punitive system. Perhaps the revenge of a nation bent on retribution. Instead, they found something far more unsettling: abundance. The trains that carried them inland from the East Coast weren't cattle cars. They were regular passenger trains, the same ones American civilians used. Through the windows, the prisoners watched in silence as America revealed itself, mile after endless mile. Factories sprawled across the landscape, their smokestacks belching continuous production. Rail yards stretched to the horizon, filled with new tanks, trucks, and artillery pieces awaiting shipment. Farms extended in geometric precision, worked by massive machines that seemed to do the labor of 100 men. One German officer, keeping a secret diary despite regulations, wrote, "We have been riding for 2 days. The factories never stop. Even in the smallest towns, we see new automobiles, paved roads, electric lights everywhere. Where is the America that is supposed to be starving? Where is the weakness we were promised?" When the prisoners finally arrived at their designated camps, scattered across 46 states, the cognitive dissonance only deepened. Over 500 POW camps were established during the war, housing approximately 425,000 German prisoners by 1945. These facilities ranged from massive compounds holding thousands to smaller branch camps near agricultural areas. The camps themselves defied expectations. Barracks were clean, heated in winter, and equipped with proper sanitation. The Geneva Convention mandated humane treatment of POWs, and America, flush with resources, exceeded the minimum requirements almost casually. It wasn't cruelty that shocked the Germans. It was the opposite. Meals became a daily reminder of the disparity between the two nations. Breakfast might include eggs, bacon, bread with real butter, and coffee. Lunch brought meat, vegetables, and fruit. Dinner was equally substantial. Many German POWs found themselves eating better than they had as soldiers in the Wehrmacht, and certainly better than their families back home, who were enduring increasingly severe rationing as Allied bombing intensified. The orange became a symbol that POWs would remember for decades. In Germany, oranges were exotic luxuries, seen perhaps once a year, if at all. In American POW camps, they appeared regularly. Guards would hand them out casually, unaware of the psychological impact. To the prisoners, each orange was a small bomb of realization. America had so much that it could give tropical fruit to its enemies. One prisoner recalled, "I held that orange in my hand and thought about my mother in Hamburg. She hadn't seen fresh fruit in a year. And here I was, a prisoner, and they were giving me oranges like it was nothing. That's when I understood we had no chance of winning this war." Under the Geneva Convention, POWs could be required to work, though not in direct war production. The United States put them to labor across the country, primarily in agriculture and food processing, industries depleted by American men serving overseas. This work program became another window into American reality. German prisoners found themselves on American farms, working alongside machinery that seemed impossibly advanced. Tractors were common on even modest American farms. Combines harvested wheat with mechanical efficiency. Dairy operations used electric milking machines. In Germany, most farming was still done with draft animals and hand labor. The prisoners were paid for their work, 80 cents a day in camp scrip that could be spent in camp canteens. These canteens stocked cigarettes, candy, toiletries, and other goods. It was another small detail that revealed a larger truth. America could afford to pay its prisoners and stock shops for them while simultaneously fighting a two-ocean war. Those who worked in towns or on farms near population centers saw ordinary American life up close. They saw families with automobiles, something only the wealthy possessed in pre-war Germany. They saw houses with electricity, indoor plumbing, and telephones as standard features. They saw children well-fed and well-clothed. They saw movie theaters, drugstores, and supermarkets stocked with goods. A farmer's son from Bavaria, imprisoned after the Battle of the Bulge, later wrote, "Every American seemed to live like our aristocrats. They complained about rationing, but they had more with rationing than we ever had in peacetime. Their dogs ate better than many German families." The realization of America's industrial might broke something fundamental in many German POWs. It wasn't just the abundance. It was the ease of it all. America was fighting major wars on two fronts, supplying its allies with billions of dollars in equipment through Lend-Lease, maintaining a massive military across the globe, and still, the civilian population lived comfortably. Intelligence officers who interviewed prisoners noted a pattern. Initial capture brought relief at surviving. The Atlantic crossing brought anxiety. But arrival in America brought something else, a profound disillusionment with everything they'd been told. The propaganda had been so complete, so persuasive. They had believed that America was controlled by Jewish financiers who had hollowed out the nation's strength. They had believed that racial divisions would tear the country apart. They had believed that American soldiers were soft, undisciplined, and cowardly. They had believed that American industry was inferior to German engineering. Every day in captivity contradicted these lies. Some prisoners clung to Nazi ideology despite the evidence, but many others began to question everything. If the regime had lied about America, what else had been a lie? Discussion groups formed in camps. Some prisoners secretly listened to American radio broadcasts or read American newspapers provided by camp administrators. A denazification process, unofficial and organic, began behind the barbed wire. POW mail was censored, but the censors read every letter, and what they read fascinated American intelligence. Despite instructions to be careful with information, many prisoners couldn't help but describe what they were experiencing. "The portions are so large I cannot finish my meals. They have given us winter coats better than the ones I had in the army. I am working on a farm. The farmer owns 3 tractors. 3 for one farm." They showed us a film about American war production. I think it was propaganda, but if even half is true, we cannot win. These letters reached Germany sporadically as the war ground on, often arriving months late, sometimes not at all. But those that did arrive planted seeds of doubt. If prisoners in America were living better than soldiers at the front, better than civilians at home, what did that say about Germany's position? When the war ended in May 1945, German POWs in America faced an uncertain future. Most were repatriated over the following year, returning to a Germany devastated by bombing, divided by occupation, and facing starvation. The contrast with their time in America was stark and painful, but many of those former prisoners carried something back with them, a different understanding of the world. They had seen that prosperity was possible, that democracy could coexist with power, that the Nazi vision of racial hierarchy and conquest was not only evil, but unnecessary. In the years that followed, as Germany rebuilt under the Marshall Plan, many former POWs became advocates for democracy and reconciliation. Some returned to America as immigrants, bringing their families to the land where they had once been prisoners. They had arrived as enemies and left as witnesses to a truth their own government had hidden from them. The story of German POWs in America is not primarily about camps or captivity. It is about the power of reality to overcome propaganda, about how abundance revealed more than any speech could about the nature of the two societies at war. These men came expecting weakness and found strength. They came expecting suffering and found plenty. They came as believers in Nazi ideology and left, many of them, as its most disillusioned critics. One former prisoner, interviewed 50 years later, summed it up simply, "We lost the war long before the surrender. We lost it the moment we saw what America really was. Everything after that was just waiting for the inevitable end." The greatest weapon America deployed against these German prisoners wasn't cruelty or propaganda. It was simply the truth, revealed through 3 meals a day, heated barracks, and the view from a train window crossing an industrial heartland that never stopped producing, never stopped growing, never stopped proving that the future belonged to those who built rather than conquered.